Great. Senator Tony Loffreda, welcome to our Great Canadian series of interviews.
Thank you.
Souhaite la bienvenue et bienvenue à nos auditeurs francophones. We welcome all participating schools across Canada and abroad. Today's interview is hosted by Blessed Sacrament School here in Vancouver. I am Ben Harlander, and these are our students in grade 5, 6, and 7 who helped prepare the questions for this interview. We have 3 boys today, Ethan, Sean, and Sebastian, and 2 girls, Elise and Lily. As per our usual format, each student will ask 2 questions. 8 questions will be in English and 2 will be in French. We know that French is one of your many languages, Senator, and that you are in fact multilingual. Shall we go forward?
We shall go forward. We're ready to go, and thank you for having me this morning. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. Ethan.
I speak often of youth empowerment, having been on the board of directors of Concordia University, and having worked with McGill University and done many balls with them, balls and fundraisers, and I've also spoken very often at McGill University to their students. So I'm proud to be here, and it's always a pleasure to speak to our youth. Youth empowerment is key in this great country.
Thank you. So our first question is going to be from Ethan.
Good morning, Senator. Young Global Citizens is a movement created by teachers from our school. This current interview is part of our Great Canadian series. I guess my first question today is a double question. What does it mean to you, Senator, for someone to be a great Canadian, and what does it mean to be a global citizen in this day and age?
Thank you for the question. It starts always with values. I've always said values make a person, make a corporation, make an institution. Very important to have personal values. I think you have to develop those personal values early in life and not only speak about them, but live them. And my personal values for years, it always starts with integrity, which is never, never, never negotiable. Integrity is a key personal value. You can negotiate anything in life. I've spent a whole life negotiating deals, negotiating terms, negotiating conditions. But you can never negotiate integrity. Then responsibility. Responsibility and accountability are key. So important. Diversity. More and more we see in our world how diversity is key and what it brings to a society, to a corporation, to an institution. Diversity is especially key. Service. We must be of service. Service to our communities, service to our families, service to our friends, listening, learning from others, having a purpose, wake up with a purpose, and teamwork and collaboration are also key. So if you take those values and live by those values, I think you can't go wrong. That's what makes a great Canadian, living by our values.
Thank you, Mr. Loffreda. You spent your career as a banker, serving in high positions with RBC Bank. Now that you are serving the people of Canada as a senator, especially during a pandemic where it seems a lot of what do you think you should be doing? I'll just restart. Mr. Loffreda, you spent your career as a banker serving in high positions with RBC Bank. Now that you are serving the people of Canada as a senator, do you think there's more the bank should be doing with the social inequalities, especially during a pandemic where it seems a lot of poor people are becoming poor and all the rich people are becoming richer? What are your thoughts on this situation?
Well, thank you for the question. That's a great question. A lot of people don't know, but our banks are very involved in our communities. Very, very involved in our communities. And when I was at RBC as an executive, we used to give 1% of our profits to donations in our communities. And then there was the expense accounts when you had to participate in the activities. We had to walk the talk, like they say, and we had to be there with our communities. And I always encourage that. So 1% of profits go towards donations. And in BC, there's Race for Kids that the bank RBC just put together. And they raised $500,000 for support to critical childhood and cancer research and mental health initiatives at BC Children's Hospital. So our banks are very involved. I think in the banks, we are fortunate in Canada to have a very strong economic system and very strong banks that can support our communities, that can support our businesses, that can support our small and medium-sized businesses that employ most Canadians. And it's important to have very strong banks. And I think the banks have played a key role in this country in equality, in diversity. And I am very confident and almost certain they will continue doing so. It's part of their DNA. It's part of who they are. And I'm very proud to have been a banker for so many years, 35 years in the financial industry. So I'm very proud of that. And we always, we helped clients thrive, but most important, help communities prosper. I've always said, not only important to help clients thrive, but if we don't help our communities prosper, we're losing, and we're losing big time. So we always did that. Help clients thrive, communities prosper, and banks are very involved in our communities. But unfortunately, not everybody knows that. But thank you for the question.
Thank you, Ethan. Next, we have Sean.
Thank you, Sean. Good to see you.
Great. Mr. Senator, following on the same topic, you have an impressive record of humanitarian work in regards to health, education, and social services in the Montreal area and across the province. We also believe in helping our community. My question is, would you share some of your experience with us as to how to conduct effective fundraising?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. That's always also a great question. It's been, if I look back in my career and I say, where did I have the most fun? What did I enjoy the most? And it was getting involved with communities, getting involved with great causes. When I was nominated to the Senate, I resigned from the 21 boards I was on. And I retired from RBC. I want no conflict of interest. I strictly want to be a great senator. And hopefully I will get there one day, and I'm working on it. I'm trying hard, and I think I'm a good senator. I want to be a great senator, and hopefully I'm a great senator already. But that's not for me to decide. But what's important, and I say all that because I've had so much fun on the 21 boards I sat on. That's when I did resign and was nominated to the Senate. But before that, I sat on so many boards, and where I had the most fun was getting involved with our communities. And it's all about people. If I say one thing, it's about people. It's about trust. It's about creating relationships. And many times, my people would go. I had 7 senior VPs, and I had so many colleagues, and they would go to events in the evening and say, "I gave out 50 business cards. I met so many people, and we're going to really help raise great funds for this event." And I said, 50 business cards. I said, you're doing the wrong thing. Go out to an event. Give 5 business cards. Create instant intimacy. What's important is instant intimacy. Meet fewer people, but create real relationships. Talk about real issues. Talk about real things. Like this morning, I'm talking from the heart. Real issues, real things, intimacy, and create a bond. So when you do leave, the person says, I just met Senator Loffreda. It seems like I've known him for 35 years. And that is important, because when you do call him, if it is a good cause, it's about relationships. It's about credibility. It's about trust, which is the currency of every relationship. So it's a great question, but it's not about cold calls. It's not about big lists. It's not about calling people that you feel will contribute to the cause because it's a great cause. That could work too. But what works best is creating relationships, creating contacts, making connections. You support them. So instant intimacy. If you remember one thing out of this question, instant intimacy. You meet somebody, discuss real issues, real things, real objectives, real goals, real life. And that creates a bond. That bond will serve you well for many, many, many years. Is that a good answer? Thank you. Thank you for the question.
Very helpful, thank you. Mr. Loffreda, one thing we discovered about you is that you enjoy being connected to a lot of different cultural communities. Of course, the Italian-Canadian community and also the Greek community. You saw on Twitter that you recently attended something called OECD. Can you tell us more about OECD?
Yes, thank you. That's a great question
what to
too.
do? Also, what did you talk about during this meeting? And was it useful and relevant to Canada and young people?
Thank you for the question. Good question. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development is an intergovernmental economic organization with 37 member countries, including Canada, the United States, France, Japan, and the United Kingdom. The member countries collaborate on key global issues, building on collective wisdom and shared values. There again, there you go, shared values. Look how the values, how important they are. Such issues could consist of finding policy decisions to stimulate growth and improve living conditions, which is so important in today's world. We talked about equality. We have to improve living conditions across the globe. During the OECD Global Parliamentary Network meeting on October 1st and 2nd, which you're referring to, we addressed the following COVID-19 topics. COVID-19 is such a huge topic these days, obviously. We're all in confinement, wearing masks, isolation, depending where in the world. We discussed what a strong health system means now. What does it mean, a strong health system? Learning from international education responses to the crisis. We have to learn from each other. A tightrope walk to recovery, economy and employment, because no employment, no economy. The economy needs employment, low unemployment, and stabilizing finances and fostering business and small and medium-sized enterprise resilience. Because small and medium-sized businesses employ the majority of our people. They're the most vulnerable, especially in a pandemic. And how do we develop resilience in these sectors? So I hope that answers your question. And that's a very good question. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. And now we have Elise.
Hello, Mr. Loffreda. When we talk about great Canadians, we try to study a particular value or quality that makes a person memorable or significant. Among all of your friends, we saw that you were close to the former legend of hockey, Mr. Guy Loffreda. Not many young people may know about Mr. Loffreda today. We also saw that he is fighting for his health right now. Can you tell us about Mr. Loffreda and name one quality about him that impressed you?
Thank you. Always a great question when it comes to Guy, and I love Guy. He's my childhood idol, and I remember when the Montreal Canadiens used to play, and we would watch a playoff game in the 70s. My heart used to beat harder and faster than Guy's, and he's given us so many great moments. What I like most about Guy is his empathy. When I say empathy, today when we used to look to hire young employees and young bankers, a lot of people look for the IQ. Where are they? How intelligent are they? Where are their marks? I would look for EQ, emotional intelligence. And why? So important to know what the other person is feeling. How do you negotiate with the other person if you don't know how he's feeling? And this is what Guy has that's so solid: is empathy, sincerity, transparency. I love Guy and empathy. He knows how to seize the moment. He knows what you're feeling. He knows how to help you. He knows how to make you feel good. And this is what made him such a great hockey player. He knew how to rise to the occasion. And I am certain that he will rise to the occasion once again and beat his cancer. And it's a tough cancer. This one's a tough cancer. It's a lung cancer. It's a tough cancer. And in those days, with all due respect, we didn't know that smoking was that bad for you. And we didn't have all that information that you have today. So I feel it for Guy, but my prayers and thoughts are always with him, always with his family. And I'm very confident that he'll get through it. But most important, you've got to connect with people. And that's what Guy was strong at. And they knew that when Guy talked, he meant it. It came from the heart. There was no prompter. There was no notes. It came from the heart. So that's why I loved Guy Loffreda.
Thank you. Also, do you have other individuals around you who believe would qualify as great Canadians? They don't need to be famous people.
Well, there's too many to mention. I mean, if I mention a senior executive, thank you for the question again. Great question. regular people could be great Canadians. I mean, great Canadians, I think great Canadians is we are law-abiding citizens that wake up with a purpose, that work hard. We are great Canadians. All of us are great Canadians if we want to be great Canadians. Great Canadians are regular people also. If I mention one of my former colleagues or bosses or senior executives that worked with me, many are going to call me today and say, how come you didn't mention me and you mentioned him and you mentioned the other? But if I look at Vancouver, close to home, if Roberto Luongo, who is a Montrealer that played for the Vancouver Canucks, is a great Canadian. And I was honorary president of Roberto Luongo's golf tournament many, many times when he came here for children's hospitals. He would donate some all over the country. And, you know, I've done a lot of philanthropy, not only here in Quebec, but all over the country. And Roberto Luongo was someone that I admired. He's a great Canadian. We have an arena named after Roberto Luongo here in Montreal. And he was a great Canadian. He was one that, you know, he had empathy. He had sincerity, transparency like Guy Lafleur, and he loved people. That's what's important. How do you help people? Roberto didn't have to come here and do golf tournaments for charity after having great seasons with the Vancouver Canucks, but he did it because he wanted to. So that to me is a great Canadian. Somebody that's out there that is a leader. And may I end that question with one sentence? If you remember one sentence out of that question, leadership is selfless. You have to be selfless to be a leader. Don't be selfish. Don't think about yourself. It's always about everybody else. And even when they ask me in an interview, you can look back at some of my interviews. Talk about yourself, who you are. I try to keep it to 2 or 3 sentences if I can. Sometimes they'll call me or they'll text me, say, no, you got to say more than that. We got to know who you are. No, it's about everybody else, not about you. Leadership is selfless. Is that a good answer? Thank you for the question.
Excellent. Next, we have Sebastian.
Sebastian, nice to see you.
Hi, Senator. Tell us about some strange and quirky details about the Senate of Canada where you work at. Are the chairs comfortable? How's the food there? Do you have a special feeling about the place when you come to work every morning? What else can you tell us about life at the Senate, especially with COVID going on right now?
Thank you for the question. That's a very relevant and great question. First of all, I consider myself honored and privileged to be a senator. I never forget that every morning that I wake up and I walk into that red chamber. I really consider myself honored and privileged. It's a privilege to serve Canadians. You must never forget, you're there to serve Canadians. And, you know, you talk about the food or you talk about everything else. And I was an executive in the biggest bank in Canada. So, I mean, we had good food and we had all of that. But the Senate is special. When you walk into the Senate, you get that feeling that, wow, this is a great country. It's one of the greatest parliamentary systems in the world. And I'm going to contribute. I'm going to make it work. And as you know, the Senate is a tick and check on Parliament, on Cabinet, on the Prime Minister. A law has to go through the Senate to become law. Senators can originate and really, make a motion to have a law. They can create laws and push them through the Senate and the House of Commons. So to become law, it has to go through the House of Commons and the Senate. It's a dual parliamentary system, so it's extremely important in our parliament. And anyway, a good story. The Senate block right now is undergoing renovations. And the Senate Canada building used to be Ottawa's former train station. So we're in Ottawa's former train station. It is linked by an underground tunnel to Ottawa's historic hotel, the Chateau Laurier. So this is an interesting story. The president of the Grand Trunk Railway, Charles Melville Hayes, who was the man behind the construction of both buildings, was unable to attend the grand opening of the Chateau Laurier on April 25th, 1912. Guess why? Because he was on board the Titanic that sank in the Atlantic Ocean on April 12th. So he was unable to be there. And in April 1957, the king of rock and roll himself, Elvis Presley, traveled to Ottawa by train and arrived at the train station. So on the original mahogany bench from the train station's formal waiting room has returned to its original home in the Senate of Canada building, and thanks to a loan from the Canadian Science and Technology Museum. So that's a nice story, and that you can relate to our history and remember why it's so important, why history is so important. But it's a nice story, and one that I wanted to share.
Thank you. Also, my other question is, why should the Senate matter to young people? What is the Senate doing to stay connected to young people?
Very good question again. Young people are important. And the Senate is, like I said, is an important part of our parliamentary system. Important work is accomplished at the Senate, especially through our committees. Our committees are the strength of the Senate. Our committee work is exceptional. The committees do exceptional work and research on topics of national interest. You should be very interested in these topics being studied because they are of national interest. They're analyzed and debated for the good of all Canadians. And if there is one report, is the Penny Report is a great example of one of the reports that the Senate did. And in December 2010, the Committee on Banking and Trade and Commerce released a report called the Committee Report. And that was so important because what happened there is the report calling the government to eliminate the penny, the 1 cent, saying that it costs more than it's worth, and arguing that it had outlived its purpose. In March 2012, the Harper government announced that it will eliminate the penny. So, so very important. And also one of the key features of the Senate, compared to the elected House of Commons, is that it was established in 1867 to make sure regions with fewer people still had a strong voice in Parliament. Nowadays, senators also stand up for groups that don't always have a big presence in the House of Commons or are considered underrepresented, like Indigenous peoples, visible minorities, women, immigrants, and more. Our discussion today as part of the Senate's Engage program allows senators from across the country to connect with students at all levels, primary, secondary, and post-secondary. And since its inception, dozens of senators have participated in hundreds of events and engaged with youth to share their experience and discuss the work of the Senate. But if I can relate and share one report with you that one of our committees, the Banking, Trade and Commerce Committee has done, the Banking, Trade and Commerce Committee released a report on the penny. And that's the report that eliminated the penny in March 2012, when the Harper government announced its elimination. So it gives you an example of how important those committee reports are and what they lead to and what they could result in. And as I initially said, senators can propose laws also, propose laws of national interest based on research, based on work, and also amend laws that are proposed by the House of Commons to improve quality of life for all Canadians. So amend, propose, and finally approve and vote on the laws that are being proposed by the House of Commons or proposed by the Senate itself.
Next, we have Lily.
Thank you for the question. Lily, hi.
Lily, I think we'll redo that.
Lily, you're on mute, maybe.
Lily, we can't hear you. Isn't technology amazing?
Is the technology? That's why I always check constantly. Am I okay? Is the mute? The video still on? I always give it a check because after every answer, sometimes it mutes automatically this computer, right? So.
All right, Lily.
Does it, or you click something? Lily, nice to see you.
Bonjour, Mr. Loffreda. Nous aimerons poser une question à propos des langues. Nous savons que vous avez grandi en plusieurs langues. Avez-vous des histoires à raconter de votre jeunesse à grandir dans plusieurs langues? Avez-vous des conseils pour des jeunes comme nous qui essaient d'apprendre plusieurs langues?
Merci pour la question et bon matin à tous. C'est important. J'ai passé une vie dans ma troisième langue, qui est le français, et j'en suis très fier. C'est important de parler plusieurs langues pour bien connecter avec nos communautés. Je pense que la chose la plus importante qu'on peut faire, c'est de parler à quelqu'un dans sa langue à lui. Très important de le faire. Et c'est aussi important de connaître plusieurs langues parce que les langues mènent à des cultures différentes. Et on apprend beaucoup plus sur la culture, on apprend beaucoup plus sur la communauté, les communautés, si on parle leur langue. Donc, c'est très important, c'est toute une richesse et je me considère très chanceux, très heureux d'avoir été, je suis né au Québec, je suis né à Montréal et ça m'a donné l'opportunité d'apprendre plusieurs langues. Et le français est une langue primordiale au Québec, qu'on parle à tous les jours et j'ai passé une vie en français. Parlant dans la langue française. Et j'ai plusieurs amis, beaucoup d'amis, qui sont des Canadiens français, plusieurs amis qui sont dans toutes les communautés. Donc, tous des gens qui viennent des communautés qui sont très importantes pour le Canada, pour le Québec, et très heureux de le faire, et très heureux de répondre à ta question en français. Merci pour la question.
Je suis d'accord. Mr. Loffreda, nous avons rendez-vous au cours des prochains mois avec au moins 7 autres sénateurs canadiens. Avez-vous des idées ou des suggestions de questions que nous n'avons pas posées aujourd'hui, mais qui seraient, selon vous, importantes à poser pour le bénéfice de tous les jeunes du Canada? Que devraient demander les jeunes à propos du Sénat?
Merci, c'est une excellente question et j'aimerais te répondre que oui, il y en a une question très importante qui n'a pas été posée. Souvent, nos employés, nos jeunes employés ou les jeunes étudiants dans les plusieurs conseils dont j'étais sous le conseil de Concordia, comme j'ai mentionné tantôt, me demandaient souvent qu'est-ce que ça prend pour réussir dans la vie. Un grand psychologue américain, Lewis Terman, fait une thèse qui a duré 40 ans. Une thèse, une étude, une recherche pour expliquer c'est quoi une thèse à vous, les jeunes étudiants ce matin, qui a duré 40 ans. Une recherche qui a duré 40 ans. Une étude qui a duré 40 ans. Et il a fait sa thèse en 1921, ou dans les années 20. Il a pris à peu près 1600 étudiants qui avaient les plus hautes notes aux États-Unis, dans les écoles, dans les universités américaines. Les étudiants qui avaient les plus hautes notes. Pour lui, c'était les plus intelligents. Il voulait savoir combien de ces étudiants allaient réussir dans tous les aspects et les éléments importants de leur vie, que ce soit famille, relations, santé, carrière. Donc, les éléments importants à un niveau exceptionnel. Combien de ces étudiants avec les plus hautes notes allaient réussir? La réponse, moins de 1% ont réussi. Moins de 1%. Par la suite, il a fait le contraire. Il a pris ceux qui ont réussi dans tous ces aspects-là, qui ont réussi à un niveau d'excellence exceptionnel. Qu'est-ce qu'ils ont fait? Qu'est-ce qu'ils ont eu que les autres n'ont pas fait, n'ont pas eu? Un, c'est la confiance. Il faut toujours avoir confiance. Confiance dans nos moyennes. Deux, c'est l'ambition. Il faut toujours vouloir se réveiller avec une raison d'être. Wake up with a purpose. Mais trois, surtout, la persévérance. Il ne faut jamais lâcher. Never quit. Never, never, never quit. Donc, c'est ça, ces éléments clés. Confiance, ambition, persévérance. Donc, c'est selon Lewis Terman, une recherche de 40 ans, les éléments que ça prend pour réussir.
Excellent. Merci, Lily.
Merci, Lily. Merci.
Great advice. Merci beaucoup. On behalf of our movement and all schools who will be watching this and who are right now preparing interviews, we want to thank you for taking the time and giving us the opportunity to explore some ideas with you today.
Thank you very much. The pleasure was all mine. And if they remember one thing, remember what it takes to succeed. Confidence, ambition, but most of all, perseverance. With integrity never being negotiable. To all future great Canadians, thank you.
Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup.
Merci.
Au revoir.
Au revoir. Bonjour. Bonjour. I'm going to leave now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Loffreda.